He's skinny, doesn't look strong, and honestly, most people thought he wouldn't last a week in the NHL. Elias Pettersson is the exact opposite of what you expect when you think of a hockey star. Where most NHL players crash into opponents like tanks and skate like rockets, Elias looks more like the quiet kid in class who forgot his lunch. No wild hair, no crazy tattoos, no trash talk, just a pale, skinny Swede who looked like he was more likely to open a textbook than take over a hockey game. And yet, somehow, this stick-thin forward didn't just survive in the world's toughest hockey league. He owned it. The guy barely tipped 160 pounds when he was drafted. He looked like he could blow away in a strong wind. Scouts said he was too soft, too light, and wouldn't last a month playing against guys who had 5 inches and 40 pounds on him. Even fans were confused when the Canucks called his name. There were bigger names on the board, safer picks, but none of that mattered, because once Elias hit the ice, everything changed. He didn't need to throw hits. He didn't need to drop the gloves. His game wasn't about power. It was about precision. He saw plays before they happened. He passed like a quarterback and finished plays like a sniper. While others chased the puck, Elias read the game like a book he'd already written. And now, he's one of the most important players in Vancouver. But a leader, a star, and a symbol of how wrong the hockey world can be about what greatness really looks like. What makes his story so wild is that none of this was supposed to happen. It almost didn't. Before we get into how close the world was to missing out on him, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. If the Canucks hadn't taken a chance on this too skinny Swedish kid, they might still be stuck searching for their next franchise player. No identity, no direction, no hope. Because let's be honest, when the Sedins retired, they left a giant hole. The Canucks didn't just lose 2 legends, they lost their heartbeat. And for a while, it felt like nobody knew where the team was going next. Then along came Elias, a soft-spoken teenager from a small Swedish town who didn't even look old enough to rent a car. And still, somehow, he was the one expected to carry a broken franchise. Scouts didn't see a future star. They saw a gamble, a project, a kid who might be fun to watch, but would probably get knocked around too much to make it in the NHL. His frame was too thin, his stride wasn't explosive, and during his draft year, some teams completely passed on him because they didn't think his game would translate to North America. They wanted strong, they wanted safe, they wanted NHL size. But Vancouver didn't play it safe. They saw the skill, they saw the hockey brain, they saw something nobody else had. A player who didn't just play the game, but understood it on a whole different level. And if they hadn't trusted that instinct, if they had taken the safe pick like everybody else, there's a good chance Pettersson never becomes a Canuck. And without him, maybe this team never finds its spark again. He wasn't supposed to be the guy, but somehow, against all odds, he became the guy. And from that moment on, everything started to change. Elias Pettersson grew up in a small town in Sweden called Ånge, a place so quiet and tucked away that most people outside of Sweden have probably never heard of it. It wasn't the kind of town where hockey legends were born. There were no fancy rinks, no professional coaches, no shiny new gear, just cold winters, frozen ponds, and a few broken nets sitting in the snow. But to Elias, it was perfect. His older brother Emil played hockey, and from the moment Elias could walk, he wanted to follow in his footsteps. If Emil was skating, Elias was watching. If Emil was shooting pucks in the backyard, Elias was right there beside him, copying every move, even if the stick was too big for his hands. That backyard with its uneven boards and slushy ice is where everything started. They didn't have private lessons or trainers. What they did have were YouTube clips, hours and hours of NHL highlights. Elias would watch the same plays over and over. Pavel Datsyuk weaving through defenders, Peter Forsberg scoring with one hand, Henrik Zetterberg making no-look passes. These weren't just cool moments to him, they were lessons. Elias studied them like homework. He wanted to understand how they did it, the timing, the angles, the little details that made great players different from the rest. But even with all that knowledge, he had one big problem, his body. He was small, not just shorter than the other kids, skinnier too. He didn't grow as fast. He didn't fill out like the rest of his teammates. While others were crashing into the boards or digging for pucks in the corners, Elias often struggled just to stay on his feet. Bigger kids knocked him around easily. Some nights, he barely got a touch on the puck. Not because he wasn't trying, but because his body just wasn't ready for that kind of game. Still, he never backed down. Instead of getting frustrated, he got smarter. He started playing in a way that avoided contact altogether. He moved before defenders could get to him. He made decisions faster than they could react. And when he did have the puck, he didn't panic. He waited, he looked, he made passes that didn't make sense until they landed perfectly on a teammate's stick. Coaches started to notice. They'd say he had vision, even at a young age. He wasn't flashy, but he was unpredictable, and that made him dangerous. He knew he couldn't outmuscle anyone, so he learned how to outthink everyone. That way of thinking became who he was. While most kids focused on getting bigger, stronger, and louder, Elias focused on getting smarter, calmer, and better. That early mindset, built in a quiet town with no spotlight, would follow him all the way to the NHL. Because even as a skinny kid playing backyard hockey in Unga, Elias Pettersson was already doing what most players never learn how to do: slow the game down and take it over. By the time Elias Pettersson hit Sweden's junior leagues, something started to click in a way that made people stop and stare. Sure, he still looked like he needed to gain 20 pounds and maybe eat an extra meal or two, but the way he played, it didn't matter. He was on another level. He didn't just look good for his age. He made everyone else, even the older, stronger players, look like they were chasing shadows. He skated like he was floating. His passes snapped tape to tape like laser beams. And his release, so quick. Goalies barely saw it before it was in the net. It looked like he was playing a different game. Smoother, slower, smarter. Where other players forced things, Elias let the puck come to him. He always seemed to be one step ahead. But even with all that, the questions wouldn't go away. Scouts couldn't stop circling back to his body. The way he looked in a jersey, the way he got bumped off the puck in scrappy games. He's too skinny. He's going to get tossed around in North America. He'll never last a full NHL season. They liked his skill, sure, but they didn't trust his frame. Still, his play forced them to pay attention, because what he did next was impossible to ignore. In the SHL, Sweden's top professional league, Elias didn't just fit in, he stole the show. He went up against grown men, many of them former NHLers or national team players, and he cooked them. Every night, he scored, passed, controlled the pace, and just flat out took over games. And then he did something that no one thought was possible. He broke the rookie scoring record, the same record held by Peter Forsberg. That name means something in Sweden. It means greatness. And now, right next to it was Elias Pettersson. People started talking. NHL teams started watching. But even then, when the 2017 draft came around, he wasn't a lock for the top 5. Not even close. Guys like Cody Glass and Gabriel Vilardi were considered safer picks. Bigger bodies, more NHL ready. That phrase kept popping up. NHL ready. As if Pettersson's production didn't matter because he didn't fit the physical mold. So when the Vancouver Canucks used the 5th overall pick to draft him, it shocked almost everyone. The reactions were fast. The Norgana the old towards of Batsmart and not very kind. Media outlets questioned the pick immediately. Fans online weren't happy. They wanted someone who looked the part. Instead, they got a rail-thin teenager from Sweden with a funny last name. Too soft, some said. Why take a risk? Others asked. One local columnist wrote that Pettersson would be a project, not a solution. Just like that, Elias went from being the SHL's golden boy to the NHL's question mark. Then came rookie camp, the moment fans finally saw him in a Canucks jersey. And unfortunately, the doubts didn't disappear, they came back louder. He looked small. He was small. Side by side with other prospects, he almost looked out of place. Reporters asked if he needed more time in Sweden. Some wondered if he'd get hurt in the first month. The pressure was immediate. The spotlight was bright. But Elias, he said nothing. No interviews filled with bravado. No tweets clapping back. He just waited, listened, and quietly got to work. He knew what they thought. He just didn't care, because once again, he was ready to prove everyone wrong. When Elias Pettersson finally stepped onto NHL ice, it didn't take long for people to realize the Canucks might have found something special. Not just good, special. In his very first game, just minutes in, he took a simple pass, moved up the ice, and ripped a wrist shot past the goalie like it was nothing. It was clean, fast, calm, and most importantly, it was him. He didn't over-celebrate. He didn't act surprised. He just smiled like he'd been there before. Because in his mind, he had. That first goal set the tone. Then came the plays that made people sit up in their seats. A behind-the-back pass on the power play. A deke in tight space that made a defender fall down. A top-shelf snipe that left the crowd gasping. These weren't one-off moments. They kept happening. Every game, it felt like Pettersson was adding another clip to the highlight reel. And suddenly, the conversation changed. The same fans who were unsure about the draft pick were now tweeting clips of his goals. His jersey started flying off shelves. People in Vancouver were saying it out loud. This kid might actually be the real deal. But it wasn't just about goals. That's what made it different. Elias didn't just light the lamp. He changed the way the team played. Coaches noticed that when he was on the ice, everything looked smoother. The puck moved faster. Passes were cleaner. Wingers found more open space. The defense got involved more. And the team as a whole just looked better. He made the game feel easier, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. The skinny kid jokes, they disappeared almost overnight. People stopped talking about his weight and started talking about his vision, his feel, his control. And then came the nickname Petey. Simple, catchy. And suddenly, it was everywhere. Teammates used it, broadcasters used it, fans had signs with it at games. By the time midseason rolled around, Elias Pettersson wasn't just the exciting new rookie. He was the guy. He was the one fans looked to when the team needed a goal. He was the one who stayed cool when the pressure built. When the Canucks were down by 1 with 2 minutes left, you wanted the puck on his stick. Game after game, he earned that trust. Scoring clutch goals, setting up game winners, outplaying veteran stars like it was nothing. He wasn't just trying to hang on in the NHL, he was starting to own it. And back in Vancouver, something special was happening. Fans started whispering the names they'd held close for years. Bure, Naslund, the Sedins, legends, icons, and now Pettersson's name was creeping into the conversation, not because he had the same playing style, but because he made people feel the same way. That same excitement, that same hope, that sense that for the first time in years, the Canucks finally had a star again. Even the critics started to come around. The analysts who had once called him too soft now praised his composure. The writers who doubted his strength now said he had one of the highest hockey IQs in the league. The same people who once questioned if he'd make it were now wondering how far he could go. Elias Pettersson didn't just prove people wrong, he gave Canucks fans something they hadn't had in a long time. Belief. Belief that the team had a future. Belief that there was finally someone to build around. And all of it started with the skinny kid no one believed in, except himself. But just when it felt like Elias Pettersson was on top of the world, things started to slip. His second and third seasons didn't go the way anyone expected. There were flashes of brilliance, yes, but also long stretches where he just didn't look like himself. The spark was dimmer, the puck didn't find his stick in the same way, the shots didn't go in as often. Something was off. Then came the injuries, the worst being a nagging wrist problem that kept him off the ice for months. And if there's one thing a playmaker needs, it's their hands. Without them, he wasn't just hurt. He was limited. He couldn't shoot the same, couldn't pass the same, and you could see it in his eyes. He was frustrated. Fans got nervous. Some started asking if his rookie year had been a fluke. The media began to pile on. Was Elias really a franchise player? Could he lead a team when things weren't going well? And just like that, the same whispers returned. Too skinny. Not tough enough. Disappears when it matters. To make it worse, the Canucks weren't winning. The team was a mess. Inconsistent, disconnected, and full of question marks. And when a team struggles, people always look to the star. Elias wasn't just blamed for bad games, he was blamed for the entire direction of the team. Suddenly, everything he had built felt like it was being torn down piece by piece. But Petey didn't make excuses. He didn't go on long rants or blame teammates. He just went quiet and got back to work. That offseason, he reset, got stronger, got sharper, and more than anything, he got focused. The next season, he walked in with something to prove, not with his voice, but with his play. And almost immediately, people could feel the difference. He looked faster, hungrier, more confident. He wasn't trying to prove doubters wrong anymore. He was trying to remind them what they'd forgotten. The points came fast, goals in big games, assists in tight moments. He took over when it mattered. By the midway point of the season, he was leading the team in scoring, not just by numbers, but by presence. When the Canucks needed something to happen, the puck always found Pettersson. One night, against one of the league's best teams, he scored twice, and then, in overtime, made a no-look backhand pass through 2 defenders to set up the game winner. The crowd lost it. Fans were chanting his name. His teammates mobbed him at the bench, and you could feel it. Pettersson was back. This wasn't the same kid who walked into the league unsure of how he'd fit in. This was a player in full control of his game, of the team, of the moment. The stats backed it all up. Career highs in goals, career highs in assists, career highs in confidence, leadership, and impact. People always looked at Elias Pettersson and saw a weak player. Too skinny, too soft, too quiet. But what they didn't see was the truth. What made him different? What made him great? It wasn't muscle, it wasn't flash, it wasn't size. It was his mind, his calm, his patience. He reads the game like he's seen it all before, like it's happening in slow motion. He knows where the puck is going before it gets there. He sees the pass that nobody else does. He makes plays that shouldn't exist, and somehow, he makes them look simple. That's not just talent, that's control. Elias doesn't rush. He doesn't force. He bends the game to his rhythm. While others play fast and loud, he plays smooth and smart. He's the kind of player that proves something really important, that hockey isn't just about size, or speed, or strength. It's about vision, it's about feel, it's about smarts. And for every kid who's been told they're too small, too skinny, too different to make it, Elias Pettersson is living proof that greatness comes in all shapes. But if you thought Elias had to prove people wrong, you should hear what Börje Salming went through. Before Pettersson ever picked up a stick, there was another Swedish legend who changed everything, not just for the Canucks, but for the entire NHL. A man who faced hate, fear, and violence just for being European. and still became one of the toughest, most respected players the league has ever seen. His name was Börje Salming, and his story is one of the most powerful in hockey history. Click here to watch that video next. And if you enjoyed this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Thanks for watching. And remember, never bet against the skinny Swede.